Have you ever
We-
had anything happen while you were in your house?
Mark had left for work.
This is your husband?
My husband
This is
now.
Mark Brown?
Yeah. My husband
The
now.
famous newscaster who we
Yes.
adore.
They knew I was home alone with my kids. There's a man masked, and there's two to his right.
3 masked men.
They were actually watching us for about an hour. I pulled the hammer. I said, "Try me, motherfucker. Try me. Get the fuck out of my house, or I'm gonna shoot your heads off." And he just ran. My gun didn't save my life that night. It was my gun training.
Welcome to this episode of Lock, Load, and Listen. I'm here with Diana Brown, my good friend and mother and accomplished woman in many ways, which we're going to explore today. I've known her for a while and really honored to have her.
Yeah. Great to be here.
So
Thank
much
you for
coming,
having me.
despite your strep throat, which you may or may not have right now.
Yes, I think it started during yesterday's Dodger game. At
Was
about
that from
11.
screaming so much for the Dodgers?
I wasn't screaming. It was just my son and I, who has a sore throat. A couple days ago, it started. We were actually laying down next to each other, watching the game with our new puppy, and it just started. And the first thing I thought, I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to be here, today.
No, and you didn't cancel, which I took as a huge compliment.
No. If anything, this will probably make it, explode, but it's fine. It's worth it.
No, well, hopefully it's worth your while.
Yes.
Even though we paid you an ungodly sum of money to come, of like
My
$0.
Pay for my guest. Pay for my guest.
So Dana, I don't have like a real agenda with you because normally we've had a lot of guests who specifically do a job that sometimes relates to guns or firearms or other people just who are in the public eye for various reasons. But I just really liked you because of your sensibilities, and also you've got some amazing stories about living in Los Angeles as a wife and mother and homeowner. And I kind of want to start just with a general question about how living in Los Angeles has changed over the last 10 years in terms of, do you feel safer or less safe in the city?
I grew up in LA. I grew up in
know.
Glendale. I was born and raised in Glendale. And, the last 10 years, I would say LA has changed a lot. I grew up in the 80s, and LA was a different world. But the last 10 years, in terms of, do I feel safe? I do. I feel very safe. And, I haven't had the best experiences, but I do feel safe in my home. I feel safe enough to leave my kids home alone for a small period of time at night. I live in a very secure home. I have a hedge that surrounds my entire home. I have cameras. I have an alarm. I have, I watch the videos. Anytime I'm away from home, I'm watching my videos. So I don't know but I feel like that's the new norm.
It is.
Of living in LA. I'm sure the majority of the country does not live that way. But it takes one experience, that you hear of or that you experience that changes that. But do I feel safe? Yeah, I sleep well. I sleep well at night. I don't take any extra measures beyond that. But yeah, I would say I feel safe.
So
if I compare how I felt growing up here in the 80s, I lived in Glendale. I lived in Palmdale for 4 years. I feel relatively the same, except I take different measures to feel that safe.
Oh, got it.
If that makes sense.
You feel safe, but in fact, you may feel safe because you have taken these measures, which you wouldn't have done 25 or 30 years ago.
No.
Interesting. So this podcast is sponsored by a company called American Gun Owners, which is the company that I run. And what we're doing is trying to make gun ownership easier for people that are law-abiding citizens, and they get their gun, they get a subscription for ammunition, they get eye and ear protection, they get a membership to the NRA if they want it or not, and they get instruction. So you can click on in classes that'll teach you how to safely use your gun.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we found when we did the research for launching this company is there's an enormous amount of people in Southern California in particular that are rushing to buy guns now for the very first time. And these are people who normally would never want to own a gun.
Hmm.
Women are the fastest growing demographic. And people would have thought the guns are not for me. I don't need a gun. There's no reason to own a gun. But then because of the various things that have happened the last
Hmm.
6 or 7 years in the world, starting with, political unrest and then defunding the police calls and then the polarization of America right now, people don't feel as safe anymore. So they feel that one of the solutions is to own a gun in their home.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you own a gun?
We do. My husband and I own a gun. When we were dating and moved in with each other, he had a gun. He owned
Oh,
a gun.
wow.
I wasn't a gun owner. And so I decided it took me a while to get comfortable with the idea of having a gun, even though in my home growing up, my dad owned rifles because he went hunting. When we lived in
Oh,
Palmdale, especially,
that
they
makes
went
sense.
deer hunting.
Yep.
So I was around rifles and ammunition. I remember those, big, the rifle ones.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
huge. Green, I remember, and red. So I was around it. And then when it was in my home, it made me a little nervous. I asked him, obviously the questions you ask, which is, have you ever used it? Have you ever had a need to use it?
I mean, this is your husband?
My
This
husband
is
now.
Mark Brown?
Yeah, my
The
husband now.
famous newscaster
Yes,
who we
yes.
adore?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that side of him. I mean,
Yeah.
I've known Mark a little bit, but I never asked him if he owned a gun
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, and it was and it was an intimidating gun. It's a 357.
Okay.
So it's not an easy,
So that gun's always been in the house?
it's always been in the house.
Have you ever
Yes.
had anything happen while you were in your house that
I
threatened you?
I did. During COVID, right as COVID was starting, within about 2 weeks.
Ooh, I have a feeling
had
this is an interesting story.
Yeah,
I know you.
unfortunately. So, people, I don't know what, these men knew or, but as soon Mark comes home between shows for a couple hours and we have dinner together and then he leaves at like about at 9:00. During COVID, we had a COVID group. We had a COVID party group and it was my family, friends. And so we would have dinner every other night because we had nothing to do. So we would have get-togethers at my house and I had a get-together this one night in March of 2020. And as soon as the last person left, Mark had left for work and everyone helped me clean up the house. And as soon as my cousin and her boyfriend left, within 5 minutes, there were 3 men that hopped our fence. And we, owned this beautiful home in Fryman at the end of a cul-de-sac that is right at the exit of Fryman Canyon, actually.
Fryman Canyon? Okay.
Mhm.
I know that neighborhood.
And we had a fence and a gate all around our property. And what we realized later is that they were actually watching us for about an hour. We saw they arrived, a car dropped them off, and they went around. And we had this hillside, so we had no house behind us. And there was another house to the left of our property, and that was it. So you can essentially go, all around the property and not be detected. They cased the property, they watched us, and as soon as, the last person left, they knew I was home alone with my kids and my dog, and they didn't care. They wanted to come in. So, yeah.
They masked?
They were masked. Yeah, it was
That's
3
like
men.
everyone's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So what happened?
I had turned off all the lights downstairs because the house was clean. I walked my cousin and her boyfriend to the door. I locked the door, and my entire downstairs is all glass. It was built in 1989. I remember it was a modern house, and so I let them out, locked the door, headed upstairs. And I have a bit of OCD. I have to have my kitchen clean when I go to bed so that when I wake up, I wake up to a clean kitchen. And I was heading up the stairs and I reached almost the top when I realized that I had forgotten to put a stack of dishes away. And they were right next to the sink, I remember. And I paused at the stairs and I'm like, it's okay. I'll just leave it for tomorrow. And I headed up and realized, no, I want to do it now. So I went downstairs. My entire downstairs was already, the lights were off, except this one light I have a control 4 system. We have a control 4 system at the house. We had one. And it malfunctions a lot. If you have a control 4 system, you know what I'm talking about.
Ew.
The lights will sometimes just stop working and
on or off.
yes.
Yeah.
And so this one chandelier that was very light, was stayed on in the kitchen. It was a chandelier. And so, but it was it was a low light. It wasn't really a useful light. It was just for show. And so I walked downstairs and I didn't even turn a light on because I knew exactly where the dishes were. I knew this chandelier was on permanently. And so I walked, and as I got the dishes, I look up and it's all glass, and I'm at the sink looking down my driveway. You could see, you would be able to see the driveway from my kitchen sink. And right where you are, there's a man. There's a man masked, and there's two to his right, or to his left, to my right. And I had the dishes and I just watched. And weirdly enough, I stayed very calm. I stayed very, very calm. And I think it's because I had taken measures to be prepared for that exact moment. I don't know if you ever saw the HBO documentary, the Cheshire Murders, Cheshire, Connecticut. Oh. You never watched that HBO? It's a horrific story about this family where two men came into their home. They beat the husband, who was, I think, sleeping on a bench outside of his unlocked door home, outside in the front porch. He was, you need to see this. You need to see the documentary.
I want to.
He was taking a nap. He slept. It was late. It was, I think 5, 6 p.m. Sun was setting. He takes a nap on his bench in his front porch. Two men were following his wife home. They saw her at a grocery store. And it's a story of what was intended to be a burglary, a home burglary, that just went completely wrong, and chaos just ensued. And what I realized when I watched the documentary is that the reason it did is because they stayed in the home for too long. They didn't have anything of value in the home. They didn't have money. They didn't have jewelry. They didn't have enough for these two men for this to be worthwhile for them, I guess. So they ended up spending the night in the home, and the next morning they took her to the bank. And they took the wife to the bank and left the husband, who was tied up in the basement, and the two daughters.
And you'd seen this before this happened?
I had seen
so
it.
this was floating around in your head now. Oh, great.
Yes.
I'm in big trouble.
Well, it was not only that. The documentary was in my head. But also because of the documentary, I realized, and because I'm at home at night by myself with my kids, I realized I need to be prepared. So I had our school security guard who, at our school, Lawrence, I had him come to my house and tell me what should I do? What is the plan here? If someone comes and I'm downstairs or I'm upstairs. So we came up with a safe room where I would have our gun that was in the safe, ammunition, and how long I had from the time that I noticed trouble was coming to the point where I can get into this room with my two kids, put them in a spot in the room where they could be safe. And then I basically I'm sitting with my gun loaded, pointing at the door if anyone comes in. So that, I was prepared. I was prepared for that moment. And I think that is why I stayed calm. But I thought of this family. I mean, it's what happened to this family. I mean, the mother and girls were killed. They were killed. The husband escaped. He was in the basement. He escaped, but it was too late. By the time he called for help, the home was engulfed in flames because they decided to burn the home to cover up their crime.
You see these guys outside. So what then did you do?
So I saw them, and I saw them kind of coming up. They weren't rushing the house. They were just studying on, I guess, what to do. And in that moment, I was like, I don't want to take my eyes off of them. The three of them were together, and I didn't have time to get my gun. I knew I needed 7 minutes to get upstairs. My kids, I remember, were running upstairs on opposite sides of the house. I had a Great Dane. I have a Great Dane. He was upstairs with them. He is such a guard dog. I expected him to come downstairs. I know he felt them. He stayed up there with my kids. And so it was just me downstairs. And I realized that I didn't have time to do anything, not call 911. Because if I call 911, I would then lose sight of them. And I didn't want to lose sight of them. So I did something really crazy. I had just done gun training a couple of weeks before COVID. I went with a friend of mine. Every year, my husband and I would go to the shooting range in Burbank. And we would just practice with the gun, just so that, it's like I said, it's a complicated gun. It's not an
Sure.
easy gun.
Yeah.
So I would just get used to using it, just aiming and just practicing with it. I had just done that a couple of weeks prior to this happening. And so, with a gun, you kind of know the sounds it makes. And so I decided to climb up on my sink. There was this little rectangular window that would open from the inside and it had a screen. And I opened that window. I just climbed into the sink and opened the window. And I remembered the bear, what they tell you what to do if you see a bear to make yourself bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
So I climbed into the sink, got myself like on my knees and made myself big. And I acted like I had a gun. And I positioned myself and I basically yelled I didn't yell, in a strong, really strong voice. I even made my voice stronger. And I just said, get the fuck out of my house or I'm going to shoot your heads off. And the two guys behind the guy that was closest to me where you are, there was just a glass between him and I. But the two guys behind him ran immediately. They ran and hopped the fence, and there was a car waiting for them. Their getaway car was there waiting. But the guy that was closest to me just stared into the house and just sort of kind of looked closer to see if I actually had a gun. And that's where I acted like I pulled the hammer and acted like I cocked it. And I went like that with my mouth. I said, "Try me, motherfucker. Try me." And he just ran.
It was dark, probably. You had all the light stuff, so you couldn't really see what was in your hand.
No.
That's probably what maybe affected his judgment to leave.
Yeah.
It is horrific.
Yeah.
But it didn't end badly. So thankfully for you, that's really disturbing. And yet now you still seems like, I feel safe. I don't know if it's never happened to me here. Well, that's not true, actually.
I didn't feel safe after. I did sleep with my gun. I slept with my gun under my pillow. And I realized with two kids, you can't, I can't do that.
Especially young kids.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you a question, though. How do you feel about getting a license to carry a gun? Because right now in LA County, there's an enormous backlog of people. It's over like 12,000 or 15,000, depending on who you want to believe, who have applied to get a license, a CCW permit to actually carry a gun. And apparently, they're qualified, but they're taking so long to process the applicants right now. They're doing like a couple hundred a year or something because everyone doesn't feel safe. So people now, these are qualified applicants, obviously pass a background check. You have to take a course. Now it's 16 hours before you get your permit of training.
Yeah.
Do you think you would feel safer if you actually had a permit to carry the gun?
You mean to carry, you conceal and carry?
Yeah, conceal and carry.
I have a friend who actually is applying for one, who's in the process of applying, and I'm one of her. You have to have a references.
Yeah,
and I'm one of her references. They haven't called me yet, but I mean, so it's unfortunate that people don't feel safe, and I feel for the people who don't feel safe, who want that layer of protection. Safety, it's not one thing that makes you feel safe. It's different layers of safety, which is what I talked about with my cameras and my hedge, and ultimately my gun is the last ultimate layer that you don't want to use. I feel for those people that need to feel that don't have cameras, for example, don't have a hedge, who don't have they just live in apartments or live in a home that's exposed.
Good point you're making, which isn't made a lot, because people often who make decisions are not people who are living in an apartment or downtown or in the suburbs, and they don't feel safe and they don't have enough money to take all these measures because they're trying to put food on their kids' table every day. And they are basically saying, I need my gun to defend myself because the police aren't going to help me anyway. The response time's too long.
Way too long.
But I'm going back to what you just said. I'm now like hypothesizing. I wonder how you would have felt, though, if you actually had a license to carry, you had your gun, and you pulled a real gun out and you pointed it. Because that opens a whole nother can of worms in terms of liability, because you can't just shoot him.
Correct.
And that takes judgment. You have to be in control of your emotions and make all these decisions in a split second.
Yeah.
And that's frightening as well, because you could threaten him and hopefully he just turns around and runs. But what happens if he doesn't? What happens if he pulls out his gun?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then what? I mean, this is all so complicated.
I asked myself a lot, what if I had had a gun?
Right. I'll
What
bet
if
you
I
do. I'll
actually
bet you
had?
do.
And, I asked the officers when the detectives came that
Mhm.
night, and they actually came a couple days later to talk to me because they saw, I guess they read the report
Mhm.
that I climbed into my sink. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
they wanted, to speak to me, and they actually invited me, to come to the station and speak to some officers, which we didn't end up doing because COVID obviously didn't end
Right.
up being a couple weeks, long,
Right,
or a
right,
couple months
right.
like they had first said. So it never happened. But I actually asked them, like, could I have shot them, and they both said yes, even though there's a perceived threat, but really there is no, unless they break your glass and we found out later they had a brick in their hand. They didn't have, I was lucky enough that they didn't, doesn't sound like they had or look like they had a gun in their hands. They had a brick that they dropped at my front porch. Not porch.
Glad that those two officers are not dispensing legal advice. Now,
Yes.
I am not a lawyer and I don't know the law as good as someone who's a lawyer or a law enforcement officer, but I do know this. If someone's standing in your yard outside of your house, you can't shoot them. And if
Right.
you shoot them, you're probably going to jail. And you're definitely going to get sued civilly. And I'm talking about in LA County.
100%.
If they have to be basically have broken into your house and put you in an immediate fear for your life. It's called a modified castle doctrine. So you can defend your home, but only if you're under immediate fear of death can you use deadly force. And there's a lot of gray in there everywhere, particularly in LA County.
Yeah.
Now it's changing very quickly now to be in favor of homeowners because now the courts are now starting to interpret it differently because of all of the crime. But that's very tricky. Oh, that makes
It's also tricky when you have a gated home.
Very.
Because the moment that they cross your gate, they're trespassing. So
You can't shoot someone for trespass.
no, I know, but it's sort of, and that's why I asked the question. But I know that I asked myself a lot, and I think I would have used it if they had broken in. Because at that point,
You're capable of doing that?
I mean,
I
here's
know
my
you pretty well.
here's-
I think you are, and that's a compliment to you. Defending your children.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a woman with 2 children, and it's 3 men.
Right.
3, they look like men. I don't know that 100% sure, but they sure look like men. And I think I have a right to protect myself, my children, their lives. And that's, if you watch this documentary, you realize that, these cases happen. And Cheshire, Connecticut, it's the one thing that they discussed in the documentary is how safe this city is and was and still really is. People don't lock their doors. They didn't lock their doors. They explain that in the documentary. So it's, I mean, if I have no other way to protect myself and prevent something like that from happening, because here's the problem. Here's the issue that I realized in that moment where I just stayed calm and just realized, what am I going to do? I didn't have any valuables in my home. I didn't have jewelry. I didn't have money. The only thing I had, I think, was artwork. But what am I going to do here? Here's a lithograph.
You have no valuables.
I had no valuables.
Where's your jewelry?
My jewelry was, I put my jewelry away because of COVID.
Oh, in a bank?
It wasn't in the house. My jewelry was not in the house.
But they might have said, show us the safe. Oh, there's no safe here.
Right,
And then beating you up until you said, show me the safe, and then not believed you.
Yes.
I'm just going very dark now.
And we did have a safe in one of the closets, but all our safe has is paperwork.
And then you had a gun that was
and
in
I have
the
a gun
safe.
in a different safe in that safe room that I was telling you about. Yeah. Yeah.
So complicated. That's also the problem with having a gun in a safe because it's actually not very useful to you. It has to be right near where you are.
Yes. Like I told you, we timed it and how long it would took from different points of the house. If I was downstairs, my kids were up. If we were upstairs, and we had three different exit points out of the house. Is basically get out of the house in case something like that happened. So I knew people don't have 7 minutes to prepare. No. And you want to be a responsible gun owner and have it in a safe. I remember when I would have play dates in kindergarten, I actually had a mom ask me as the play date was starting, she dropped her child off, asked me if I had a gun. And I said, yes, I do. And she asked me if we had a safe. I said, yes, it's in a safe room. It's all the way up on top. And, she wasn't, I could tell, comfortable with that, but she was happy with the safety measure that we had in place.
Definitely a reasonable question, especially with a young child. But now you have kids who are 13, 14, 15. It's not as relevant, still somewhat relevant. And I'm finding this is kind of jokingly now in the last 3 or 5 years since I've kind of got into the gun space and gun world in LA. It used to be, oh, do you have a gun in your house? And if you did, oh, that was frowned upon, or that was a negative thing. And now it seems like, do you have a gun in the house? Oh, good. I'm glad. So you can defend my kids.
I
mean, this is me because I'm a gun person. So like, oh, we know I know how to use it. And so it's gone completely the opposite in the last few years. And that's what's happening a lot in Southern California, which traditionally, is a very blue state and very anti-gun. But now people are shocked to see what's happening. And part of this sentiment is represented in this enormous backlog of CCW applicants. And these are people who want to carry a gun. People are obviously wanting to buy guns now. That's our business, is to make it easier and safer for them to make good decisions. But I like your perspective, because I don't get to talk to a lot of mothers. I haven't really had this discussion, but we're finding that the market research is showing you guys are very conscious of defending your family now. And particularly to your point, people that may not have the resources that other people would have, like you have.
It's very similar to when I started driving. I remember I was one of the first generation that we had to wait. If we wanted to get our permit and license at 16, we had to go through that extra measure and do driving school. But my parents couldn't afford it. And so I had to wait until I was 18 so that I didn't have to take that driving test. And my dad taught me, in the parking lot of the LA Zoo, my siblings. I was in Palmdale at the time, so we would go up to the desert and he would teach me to drive in the desert. My dad taught me to drive, and that's how the generations before me, that's how everyone learned how to drive. But when they started this new measure, that if you wanted a license at 16, you had to take driving test or driving, you had to go to driving school from a reputable company and have a certificate. And that's the only way the DMV would give you a license if you were under 18. So it's sort of, if there's a backlog of that, does it mean that there should be shortcuts? Or no, it just means that the city needs to get better at providing it.
But remember, that's to actually carry a gun. To own a gun is enshrined in the Second Amendment. So as long as you're a qualified applicant, you pass a background check and you wait the required cooling off period in LA County, you can go and purchase a pistol or revolver or shotgun or rifle, whatever you choose. But it does come back a little bit to this sentiment. There's someone who works for our company who grew up, in a very underprivileged neighborhood, and his perspective I find absolutely fascinating. I never would have thought about this. It's just how much people are fearful, live in fear daily because of all of the crime and bad guys that are not in Brentwood or in Santa Monica. And there's people who live in bad neighborhoods who have no ability to really protect themselves except if they're armed. And so any talk of gun control or restrictions on them being able to own a gun is viewed much differently than, say, someone who has resources. I never considered that.
I think the biggest judgment that people used to make and may possibly be making now with people who feel that they need to carry a gun on them at all times is that, we're, gun happy people who just are looking to shoot people. And it's not the case. Do I feel that I need to carry a gun with me at all times? No, I really don't. However, I live in Sherman Oaks. That doesn't apply to someone living in a different area. I have a lot of family who lives in Boyle Heights, for example. It doesn't apply, and I can't place judgment, on people who live in an area that's not so safe.
Right.
So it's not one applies to all. And so if there is a person who feels that they need that extra level, that extra layer of protection, as long as it's done responsibly, as long as the training is done, and the background check and the references, like my friend
But
is going through.
that's for CCW. Just to own a gun, though, no required training.
Yeah, we're talking about conceal and carry.
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah, which I just found out about the process of that because my friend told me that I was going to get a phone call.
No, it's quite elaborate to do that, and they just doubled the amount of time. And now it's 16 hours of work on a range with accredited instructor. You have to pass. That's a lot of hours.
Yeah, and there's countries like, I think it's Japan that they require that if you want to own a gun.
Just
period.
to own a gun. That's
just
right.
to
Canada
own a
is
gun.
the same. Just to even own
you
it.
have to go through that.
You can't
training.
carry it. You can never get a license to carry in these countries.
No. And I think Japan is probably the one with the strictest. They don't let you have a handgun. It's under special. You have to be
same as the UK.
You have to be like an Olympian or a competitive shooter, or you have to give reason why you have to own a gun.
That's never going to fly in this country, and I don't think it should. Quite honestly, I think that it's kind of a cultural problem here, and it's a problem. It's a social problem.
Yeah,
and people just. Geez, it's hard to even go here without creating controversy. So I'm probably not going to do it right now. But
I'll
not good
tell you,
influences. Not good parenting. I think a lot of it comes down to parenting, which is what I really want to talk to you about next. Is parenting, because we both have kids similar ages.
Yeah,
and just how challenging that is in this world of social media. It's a constant battle. I don't know if you have it every day.
Yes,
it's screen time. It's social media. It's just screens in general, gaming, all these distractions that kids have.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my young nieces and nephews who are in their early 20s, and I asked them, like, so what's the biggest challenges do you think I'm going to be facing with my kids in the next 5 years as I get into their teen years? And they said, oh my God, it's almost impossible to focus now because there's so many distractions. And distractions are the greatest distractions ever invented. Gaming. The world that this virtual world that games create now, real life can't compete with for kids. And this is something I've kind of been noticing even with my son.
The stimulation,
It's stimulation. Also, it's just a really cool virtual world where you can do all this stuff, where you can do first-person shooter games. There's no reason to ever do anything but game. Yeah. And it's like outside, and nothing's really that interesting to them. Not to mention all the apps on their phone, all the things that phone can do, sports leagues, fantasy sports, it's the gambling culture now. It's like there's never been more distractions for young people, and that we're asking them to focus, and everyone's attention span is getting shorter and shorter. I even see it with myself. I have to work really hard. I play this game with myself now, where I'll lock myself in my office for like an hour with no phones and nothing, and I will just read and process something, or I'm trying to learn a new skill or read an article, and then I will not have my phone even around, and the computer's turned off, so I can just focus on one thing to keep that attention span longer. It's just bizarre.
And the biggest thing I noticed with my children, I have a 9-year-old. My 9-year-old loves gaming, Roblox. I let both my kids play Roblox. Like you mentioned, as long as there's time limits, as long as there's still communication in our home, is still, that's the biggest thing I've noticed, is that how it affects my children is with my 13-year-old especially, their ability to communicate with their friends. Like my daughter will tell me about issues she's having with friends, and the idea of me telling her talk to them about it is so
That's
foreign,
right?
It's
I got to talk to someone. We haven't
I'm
had
gonna
that
text
as
her.
much.
I'm gonna not text, Snapchat. I'm gonna Snapchat and see if she opens my Snapchat. That's what I know. I realized she hasn't opened my Snapchat in 3 days, so something must be wrong. That is how they're communicating now. That's how they're letting each other know there's a problem.
Is she allowed to have her phone in school?
So, no, she's at Harvard Westlake. They just implemented a no phone, so she can have it on her person, but they cannot take it out. Whereas before, they were allowed to take it out if they needed to contact their parents.
So a lot of schools now
they couldn't have it in the classroom, but now as long as it doesn't come out during the school day, it's fine. And as far as I know, she respects the rule. I'm checking. I can see her real time. The restrictions on the iPhones. You can see if they're on it, and if they are, what they're on. So for the most part, she respects the rules, which I'm proud of. But that's the biggest thing I think is how their lack of communication there, it's not a lack of communication. It's just it's tougher to deal with adversity when it comes to relationships. And and this is the years that they're developing their relationships where problems arise in relationships. So I'm afraid for my 9-year-old who's a boy. And, you boys are Our
Thing is,
little when you guys crave stimulation.
I tell my kids that everyone's so worried about losing their job to AI, and the thing
Yeah.
is, if you are really, really good at math or you're a wizard at spreadsheets, that stuff's all being done by AI now.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
human can compete. But ironically, the kids that have great verbal skills or ability
Yeah.
to manage people or lead a group study or project-based tasks, learning, that is something that AI can't do.
No.
So that's what kids need to be working on is verbally able to articulate their points, construct arguments, organize multiple inputs into solving a problem. The actual math of it, that's AI does that.
Yeah.
And that's stuff that requires a lot of practice. That's why
Yeah.
speech and debate should be encouraged with
Yes.
kids of your
Yes.
generation in
Yeah.
mind now. And also just group work. This is what their school does a lot of. And also, I think the phones are really dangerous. This is a piece of technology that no one's really thought about what the ramifications of having this device on you long term are. I think obviously the radiation that it emits when it's receiving and sending
Yeah.
is bad, number one. But most importantly, just all the temptations if you're a young person, even an adult, to sit there and scroll or even learn. It has some very positive things. Like you can learn so much on that phone. Just go listen to a podcast or
Yeah.
scroll on the internet or a new task or a new skill that you want to learn. The phone is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
But it just requires you staring at it all
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And so how are these poor kids when they're young are they able to exercise that kind of discipline? It's more than can be expected from them.
And that's where our job as parents is harder. In a lot
Way
of
harder.
respects, we have a easier job than our parents did with us and our grandparents. I was thinking about my grandma this morning, actually. I do about 2-3 loads of laundry a day. And I was thinking about her, and she used to do it by hand, in a farm in Mexico. And I think of how easier a lot of things have become, but actually that aspect of it is a lot harder because we have to teach our children, we have to really make a concerted effort to communicate with them, problem solve with them, give them that structure. And that's where I feel for parents who are working. My parents worked 12-hour days. I didn't see my parents growing up, but I didn't have technology that my children had. So I can only imagine those families who have to work 12-hour days and have kids at home who are probably by themselves with a phone. It's
complicated though, because we live in a period of time now that's characterized by anxiety, especially in North
Yes.
America, where these are more evolved capitalist systems where all of the basic necessities in life are all provided for you now.
Yeah.
You don't have to cook. You
Yeah.
just call DoorDash. Everything's available. All of the things that you normally had to do, like your point about laundry, can easily be done very efficiently with modern technology.
Yeah.
But the downside of that is people have a lot more time to sit around thinking about all the existential threats to the world, which we
Yeah.
never thought about before. Now it's climate change, it's rogue nuclear nations, it's the government collapsing, it's democracy getting destroyed. And so all of these kids now are growing up with all of this fear and anxiety all day because the media knows that's what sells. It's all over social media. Social media is being used as a tool to manipulate people.
Yeah.
So the good thing, I guess, in the old days when you had to worry about how you're going to harvest the crop or do your laundry or procure the meat and vegetables for dinner, people had less time. And everyone was oblivious to all these existential threats because maybe they weren't even real back then, like 50 or 60 years ago. People didn't think about climate change because no one had identified it yet.
Yeah.
But there were still other existential threats, even in the 60s.
Yeah.
The Cuban Missile Crisis, we were on the brink of nuclear war, 1962. That's before my time and yours.
Yeah.
But it's just complicated now, I feel, as a parent. It's like it requires a whole new handbook.
Yeah.
Right?
But when you think about it, the 60s, when did people find out about all of those, the threats happening in our environment all around us? At 6 p.m., only for half an hour at most.
Now it's a 24-hour news cycle.
And now it's a 24-hour news cycle. And now it's on our phone. So we get alerts on our phone,
constantly.
There's a hurricane happening right now in the Caribbean that has touched down. We find out bad news 24/7.
And that has a long-term effect on you.
So if our lives have become easier, why are we more stressed than I think our parents were? Why are we more worried about our children than our parents were worried about us? Because we were out spending time with our friends. They were actually seeing us, in the front yard playing with our friends. Whereas now my daughter is in her room Snapchatting with her friends. We're not seeing it. And so we're even more worried about our children because we don't know what's happening. And even though there's nothing there, unless you are logged in as your child, a lot of parents will, know this, that unless you're logged in as your child on Snapchat, you don't know. You just see that they opened up a snap or, but you don't know what they're seeing. You don't know if, like I just told you, you don't know if a relationship is having issues. And so that is why I think our anxiety, our depression, our concerns we're worried about, because we don't, this is all new and we don't know where we're headed. And I think I think about my mom, when she was raising me here in a different country than she was raised, I asked her if, she felt, worried because she was raising me differently. Because I realized I'm raising my child very differently than how I was raised. She said no, because she saw me doing the exact same things she was doing as a kid, which was playing with my friends. And that's one thing that is different. So I realized that when my daughter has friends over and they do cooking or on a weekend, or I realize my anxiety as a parent goes way down when I see her interacting with other kids. I don't know if you've ever noticed that or if that happens with you.
Yes, because I also won't allow them to be on social media. There's no Snapchat allowed, number one. And other social media, they get a little tiny bit of TikTok, like 10 minutes, and then they're done. And we can see what they're doing too. And they're not on any other platform. And we, police their time quite closely, which is a pain in the ass.
Yes.
So my whole thing is trying to keep them busy so they don't feel the need. So when we go places, or back to where I'm from, out into a rural environment, they don't feel the need necessarily to be on their phone as much because they're getting stimulation from Mother Nature, or they're out in the woods, or they're cutting wood, or they're, doing some menial task that's out in the wilderness, or clearing brush. It's just somehow the time just goes by. Maybe it'll change as they get into their teen years. It won't be cool to do that anymore, but I don't care. I'm not going to be a slave to the system or the social media the algorithms that are so powerfully programmed to take your children's time away from you and from their own sensibilities. They're not even in control of it.
No.
The smartest people in the world are writing these programs. That's the gaming is a perfect example of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you go play one of these games, it's like, wow, this is amazing. You don't want to get off of it either.
I mean, I remember Nintendo. I mean, Super Mario Brothers to get to the next level.
There
to
you
get
go.
to the next level. I remember I mean, I know what gaming addiction is.
I kind of do too. Yeah.
I would be up until 4 a.m.
Oh, wow, that's quite an admission.
As a 13, 14-year-old.
Don't tell your kids that.
Yes.
Hope they're not watching this.
But also, if we experience that, there is a level of understanding that you get it. And so if you bring in your experiences, I find that is my biggest, parenting tool.
Smart. I agree with you.
I tell, what was it? I was telling my son something. Oh yeah. He got in trouble a couple of days ago at school. He pushed a kid, and it was a girl. And, even though girls and boys when it comes to their chest look the same, it's very different. And 9 years old is when girls are discovering that, what their body is. And there are certain places you don't touch. And my son realized I had a hard lesson in that. And I talked to him, I said, sweetheart, what the lesson you're getting at 9 is the lesson I learned when I was in 8th grade. I was 14, 15 years old when I pushed my friend, and I pushed her in the chest, and she was already developed. And I'll never forget her face and how just she felt so invaded. And I said, so, the girl you push, I want you to remember. Do you remember her face? And I said, remember that face. Don't ever forget it, because that is what's going to prevent you from ever doing it again. Not so much a rule, it's sort of that is what I think is the only protective layer to all this, all this social media, and just having that relationship with your children and having that communication and showing what it looks like in our relationship. And all you can hope for is that it sort of expands to their friendships and life.
Good. Do you guys ever talk about what Mark's profession is in terms of like some of these freedoms, like freedom of expression? I mean, he delivers the news, but is he allowed to add any commentary? I've always wondered that. He doesn't really get to add any color. He's on a script, right? He reads. He's not allowed to express his own opinions. So all this, a lot of freedom of expression discussions have happened recently, mostly because people on the right have felt that, like the
Yes.
Charlie Kirk thing, you
Yeah.
don't want to hear what he has to say. He's just expressing his opinion. He got shot and killed over and all that, which we don't have to get into. But I never asked Mark that. Like I wonder if he ever has a temptation to be on there talking about a subject and then just give his own
Yeah.
commentary.
Yeah.
Like 5
Well, I think there's
seconds.
a format for that in news, and you
Yeah, but not
see
what
in
he
all these
does.
different networks, but
Yeah.
local news, no, it's mainly a script, unless it's
Yeah.
a chase that it's funny. Yesterday during the Dodger game, there was a chase of a murder suspect.
Oh, on the motorcycle?
No, I think it was a
Oh,
car.
just another one. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
all
just
day
another one
long.
in LA. That's the only time he really gets to improvise and
That's
go
funny.
off script.
Because I have heard that. He sounds like there's no way he's reading that. And he
No.
he has fun with it too sometimes.
And he has fun with it.
Yeah,
He'll express opinion, or
Right.
what did he do, or
Only in LA, it's like he's like, it
Yes.
looks like this guy's really losing it now. He's got 2 flat tires,
Yes.
but he refuses to go up. And sometimes he'll be
Yeah.
kind of smirking, like, did he not see that was a steep embankment? But he
Yes.
went over it anyway.
Yeah.
And then and sometimes there's a pedestrian he narrowly missed by.
Yeah.
It couldn't be more than a foot. I can't imagine he's really thinking well. Right? He'd say funny
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah, him and the helicopter pilot Chris Christie. Yeah, they feed off of each other, and we'll have a conversation about what motives. And I mean, that's really the only time he's, I think, able to express opinion or any form of outside the script.
Does he ever think about in his in his personal time or outside of work getting involved in any sort of dissemination of news or opinion on his own, or is he kind of not allowed to?
No.
I always want to ask that. So he can't. So what happens if he were, say, to post on Twitter, like his comments on a politically charged discussion? Would that be a no-no? Because
It's a no-no. No, it's a no-no. Mark is very traditional. He's a very traditional journalist, and I studied journalism in the 90s and 2000s, and it's all about being impartial. And I think you can have your own thoughts, your own views, your own opinions, but when you are, talking about a subject, it's just you have to be impartial. I remember that was just the number one rule. You can't lean one way or the other. Your questions have to be, sort of be a balance. And I think that's what Mark is great at.
Definitely is, yeah.
He has interviewed, President Biden, President Obama. He's interviewed so many local, Mayor Karen Bass, and he asks hard questions. And I think, we have discussions. I forgot who he interviewed a couple of months back, and I got frustrated with him because I'm like, you should have pushed, you should have put, you should have. And
that's
so
what I'm getting at here.
and he's very careful
Disciplined.
about being balanced and asking those questions that he thinks the right and the left and the people in the middle, want to hear. And it's about challenging people now. Journalism is about challenging. When you look back at Walter Cronkite and all of it was different. It was different. So no, but he's great at being very balanced, very impartial, looking at things from both sides.
Do you find yourself now? I had a tendency for a while on social media to just start expressing my opinions on certain controversial things. I just wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
And then you'd get, a bunch of haters, and then you get people on the other side who supported you. And I think he's just never allowed to do that, right? 'Cause that's probably in his employment contract that you can't express.
No.
Is it just kind of accepted? Like you cannot go on a Twitter rant.
No. I mean, we've seen what has happened to
That's
journalists who
right.
have, at ABC,
Right.
they're, great journalists who are just amazing. And you hear when they go on these rants and they just, they can't control it anymore. It's just, I teach my 9-year-old son self-control.
Right.
And that is, I think, no, Mark never gets into any, he just doesn't go there. He does not like social media. If you look at it in his Instagram account,
Never have, but doesn't surprise
we
me.
don't post our children. He doesn't post our children's faces.
Yeah.
He feels that it should be about, he is the journalist and life should be about him. And even journalism, just what about someone's life and personal life has changed so much, since the 60s, 70s, 80s. Now you have to be relatable. People have to know your personal business. And I love that Mark is very traditional in that sense and doesn't feel the need to expose his family. or his children in order to get likes,
Yeah.
and I love
Definitely.
that. And clearly, LA still loves him, still trusts him. Yeah, it's something I admire a lot about him.
Yeah, I've always liked his style too before I got to know him, and he certainly is the same in real life as he is
Hmm.
his persona on the news, and does come across so clearly and
Hmm.
strongly that he'd have to be a very, very good actor to be different, and
No,
he's
same.
not.
He's the same.
That's who he
That's his temperament.
is. That's his
That's
temperament.
his
I've never
temperament.
seen him I don't think I've ever seen him even get the slightest bit flustered, even watching soccer with you and over
Yeah,
the years in sports where there's been circumstances where, I'm ranting on the sideline,
yeah.
and he's like,
No, I think the most you'll
he's
see
pretty
is
stoic.
excitement. I'm a very calm,
Yeah,
I
yeah. Well,
whether
he's
it's a
excited,
good.
but he's
No, he gets overly excited.
yeah,
He
but I've
lets it
never seen it in
go.
a negative way.
No,
It's
in a
always
negative. No,
positive.
no,
I'm always
no.
positive energy.
It's very similar on the soccer. Our daughter plays club soccer, and there are parents who just
Oh,
lose
they
it.
lose it. Yeah.
Lose it on refs, lose it on their own children. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
you've
just
seen
ugly
it
quality,
all.
though.
Yeah. And Mark stays very calm. Yeah.
That probably goes with the job too, because you got to stay calm and collected because things
Yes.
are happening on that set too, especially when
Yes.
it's live.
Yes.
We were joking about this even before with my last guest. Like, this isn't live. This is not
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
We'll cut it into 1,000 pieces. We'll
Yeah.
start over again. Hey, Dan. Oh, okay, cut. Let's start again. Hey, so but if you're live and
Yeah.
there's 5 cameras on you and the whole world's watching, I couldn't do that.
And now imagine with
That's
social media where,
forget it. That's stress. That is
yeah.
real
Yeah.
stress.
Yeah. Yeah. You turn into a meme like that.
Yeah. And then people are
And
going to eviscerate you for your mistakes
yeah. You say the wrong thing.
constantly and
Yeah.
on a repeat, on a loop.
Yeah. And it's crazy when you think about it because, what did we teach our kids when we did the social media classes, at our kids' elementary school? We teach our kids that everything you write stays, it's forever.
Permanent.
It's permanent. And it's so just crazy that adults can't follow that and don't understand that. And, that's why people are losing their jobs. But I think also there's so many podcasts out there. There's so many other options that I think even if you lose your job, there's so many other directions you can go in now with journalism. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. I don't know, but I think there's just something really beautiful about integrity. And,
so
just,
well put, Dan. I
yeah,
like that. And I have to say that resonates with me because we live in a world now where it's really hard to find people with
hmm
integrity. And I challenge myself
yeah,
constantly to exhibit more integrity every day,
yes,
especially as a father and a role model, which doesn't come as naturally to me as I'd like to admit. I
yeah,
mean, I've been subject to a lot of different forces over my course of my life. And now more than ever, we need people with integrity because
mhm,
the system's being challenged and people on the left and on the right
yeah,
make very viable claims that our leaders on
hmm
both sides are very much lacking integrity. I'm not going to single out the Republicans or the
yeah,
Democrats. Everybody right now, there is a dearth of integrity in our system
yeah. In
and
politics and
in
journalism and
almost everything.
yeah, everything,
And there's
even parenting, you know that,
100%. That's why I'm saying
yeah,
it's like for me to say to my kids, listen, you need to be more moderate on the amount of time you're spending on social media. And I want you to try to do something like go read a book or learn a new skill. And then if they come in and watch me just scrolling through Instagram for 20
yeah,
minutes, like, well, you're not.
yeah,
That means nothing. And then the old days when it used to be about smoking, remember?
hmm
Because now
yeah,
kids don't really smoke
no,
anymore because parents don't smoke because we
yeah,
realize how bad it is for our long-term health prospects.
yes,
So we'd have the kid watching the dad smoke a pack of cigarettes. And
yeah,
then he'd say, well, by the way, you can't smoke. There's no smoking. Well, you just smoke a pack a day, Dad.
yeah,
And now it's like there are other things.
yeah.
And maybe social media is not necessarily the best example because it's
No,
maybe
it
lacking
is.
integrity. Maybe it's not an
No,
integrity issue, but
I think it is because we're going to find out in the coming years and decades what it's doing to our health. I mean, I don't know
for
if you've
mental health,
seen
for
if
sure.
you've seen what we're physically going to look like in 50 years. We're going to be hunched over. They even say that our skeletal,
God, that's horrible.
yeah, we're gonna actually look different. So no, I'm hoping just like we have speakers, that came to our school that tells us what too much, screen time does to a child, does to adults. I mean, we know Don't tell
your
you can't tell
attention
me you haven't
span.
been up till 2 a.m. one time, one day.
I noticed my attention span
Yes.
is under attack, which is why I took those
Yeah.
measures to like now lock myself for an hour. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
an hour and a half. I don't move. I just
Yeah.
read, and focus.
Yeah.
Used to do it all the time. Now it's less and less possible.
When I was in college, I think it was my sophomore year in college, I disconnected my cell phone for a year. I remember I got tired
Wow,
of
congrats.
people. I'm a person, I'm both an introvert and an extrovert.
Mm-hmm.
I like my alone time, but when I'm social, I love being around other people. And I realized that when I was in school, I really wanted to I had a horrible freshman year and realized that I just was socializing way too much, not going to class. It was a waste of a year. And sophomore year, something clicked where I want to get serious and realize that people having access to me 24/7 was an issue.
So smart.
So I decided, I'm gonna disconnect. And so I called, I forget who I think Sprint was my carrier. Called them, disconnected my phone, didn't have a cell phone for a year. And this was very new into cell phone. I remember it was the Motorola Razr that I had. And I was fine. And just knowing that I have that ability and still I could put my phone away and I can be without it for 5 hours.
You do that now.
I do it. I am the friend that is known for responding 5 days, even 2 weeks later. And because
we tried to get you on the show for
yes,
4 months.
No, it is.
I call you out on that. Funny.
Yeah, like right now my phone is over here just because my kids are at school and I'm going to be picking up kids, and so I have to be accessible to Mark, and Mark's on a shoot right now also, so we're figuring out carpool. But other than that, I have an ability to put my phone away. And I think my kids seeing that's
powerful
is one of the best lessons
Good
I think that I can
model.
teach them is that you don't need it. And your friends will understand. If you are my friend, you cannot get a hold of me immediately. You know that sometimes it may take weeks for me to get back to you. Like I have on my to-do list, I have the last time I checked my emails. And right now I think it's October 3rd. So I'm weeks delayed. Text messages, I think it's, October 7th. But I keep track of when the last time I checked my text messages. Unless if it's an emergency, people will call. It's obvious when someone.
Right.
But my kids know that I can put my phone down. But there's sometimes, that if a Dodger game, for example, where I was at a Harvard Westlake event last night and I had the Dodger game on my Spectrum TV app. I'm also that person who can't wait for the highlights. So I understand. We have to understand our children if we want to help them. Yep. And I believe in balance. And so this is the way life is. And I don't want them to also feel left out. I want them, this is the way they're socializing now. There's sadly nothing we can do about it. But all we can do is introduce those times where we encourage them. Bring your friends over. Just sort of balance the social media, the Snapchat, which is the new text message. I don't know if you know. My daughter has taught me that. It's not so much a social media account. It's the way that you message and communicate. And so you balance that with, face-to-face time with their family, with, their friends. Right now our teenagers, I don't know about yours, but mine are anti-family, as I was at that age. Our family isn't cool. Our friends are cool. Our friends are the ones who are letting us get to know who we are. They are our mirrors, like I tell them. Our family isn't. Our family tells us what we want to hear. But that's the best way I think we can challenge our children and guide them through this tough time. Yeah.
Let's go back to something you said earlier. You're a local.
Yes.
You were born in Glendale.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about how California has changed over the last 40-something years? Because I wasn't born here.
Yeah.
And so I talked to people who were raised here, and they all kind of sometimes reminisce, California wasn't as congested. It was a lot simpler. It was still all the other qualities that are amazing remained. Like we have today, the weather, the proximity to the mountains and the ocean and all the diversity of food and culture. That was all here. Yeah. But now you have 3 times as many people and an infrastructure that is not suited for that. And now it's so hard to live here. Do you feel that way?
Definitely. No, I had family that it was in Oxnard and Lompoc, and every weekend we were traveling to see family. Weekends were for family. Never do I ever remember being in a traffic jam unless it was because of an accident. But I don't ever remember. My brother went to UC San Diego. We would go and see him on weekends. Never remember, especially going to San Diego. When we went to Tijuana, we never had traffic. And now I'm traveling to San Diego for a weekend game with my daughter, and it's just bumper to bumper, bumper to bumper. So yes, that has changed. And that's why I think culturally LA has changed so much also, because we have so many people coming in from different parts of the country. And yeah, LA was different. In Glendale especially, it was very diverse. We had the Armenian community that we have now, but it was culturally diverse, religiously diverse. I remember we had a big Mormon community in Glendale that I don't know.
Mormon community?
Yes, yeah.
I didn't know that.
I had there were teenagers that were on their missions, and they would come to my house every couple weeks and talk to me. And because a lot of girls on the softball team and were Mormon, we had a big Mormon community at Glendale High School. And it was great just being around so many different types of people. Glendale was amazing to grow up in. And so when I went to school at Cal State Northridge, it was just an extension of that. But still, in 1998, 1999, traffic wasn't bad. I lived in the dorms and then felt comfortable to move to Burbank. I had a townhome in Burbank, and I would travel to CSUN. And the traffic, it started to get rough, but not as bad as it is now. Like, I don't think a student would ever think to live in Burbank and go to school at CSUN. That 101, the 118 used to be an open road for everyone.
I lived here long enough to remember that.
Yeah. 118 now is gridlocked, because, you have Sierra Canyon, you have a lot of people traveling to Sierra Canyon. But I think the biggest difference is just the people. The biggest complaint is that it's hard to find real friends. And, and I didn't have that issue. I still don't, because, I have a lot of family here. So that so you feel grounded. But I know a lot of my friends who are from other parts of the country. They're just trying to make friends. They're just trying to find a family because they don't have their family here.
Interesting. I agree with that. No one's ever articulated it like that. They're just trying to find a family, because my family doesn't live here.
Yeah.
And it's been really hard. But we've met some really great people through our kids' networks at schools, I find. Like you guys.
Yeah. Like I was talking to a friend a couple of years ago, and I told her, she was having drama with, some moms. And I told her, sweetheart, just concentrate on your family. That your family is who grounds you. And she's the one that told me, like, my friends are my family. I don't have my family here. And I think that is the majority of LA. I want to, it seems like that when we find someone that is from here, it's rare, And
that's why I was asking you. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What time is it? What's our?
It's 2:52.
We're good, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great. It's a great combo.
Unbelievable, Dana. Thank you so much for coming in.
Absolutely. It was great.
A nice conversation.
It was great.
Completely unscripted.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about you, a lot about California back in the day, and also how you can fake having a gun to deter 3 masked men. And
what's interesting? I tell everyone my gun didn't save my life that night. It was my gun training. And if I can push anything,
that is really, really powerful.
If I can push anyone, if you have a gun or around a gun, a lot of, I know 10 years ago, 15 years ago, our husbands would have guns, but we wanted nothing to do with it. And I would encourage, if you have a gun in your home, every adult in that home should be trained on that gun.
That's awesome. So our product, you get built-in training.
Yes.
To become a subscriber to American Gun Owners.
Yeah.
That's really smart. You heard it from you.
Yes.
All right, Dana, thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, this was fun.
That's a wrap.